and welcome to the official SuperCoach AFL show. Al Paton here with some SuperCoach experts gathered together we're calling this the first episode of 2025 because 2024 season is done and dusted. It's all about next year, and we have some really interesting players to talk about with the conclusion of the AFL Trade Period. So we'll get stuck into that in a second with my very good friends. Patch, great to have you back.
G'day, Al.
Did you enjoy
the Happy New SuperCoach year.
Did you enjoy the trades?
No, it was terrible. It was the period goes for both too long and not long enough, and it's just I wish I could have tuned out like I did most years, but it's my job now, so it's our job now. But anyway, it was fine. We get lots of SuperCoach stuff out of it though, and that's fun. So I'm keen to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. This is the good part, and very excited. Going to be some big changes, new things coming for 2025. Just all will be unveiled over the course of time. But a little teaser today is a brand new member of the podcast team, Chloe Williams. You've probably seen her on the socials, been doing some great work for us this year in the SuperCoach space. Currently ranked 100th in SuperCoach NBL, but we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about SuperCoach AFL. Chloe, great to have you on board.
Happy to be here. Patch already stole my Happy New Year joke, so I don't really have anything left in that regard. But yeah, a bit more of an NBL expert at the moment, but much more comfortable with AFL, let's be honest.
Excellent. Well, that's what we will get into.
Sorry
in the
for
next...
already just stealing all of your thunder. I'm sorry.
Great. Welcome to be part of the team. But great to have you on board. So we'll be seeing plenty more of Chloe around the traps over the next 12 months and going forward. So with a fresh new look and everything for 2025. If you're out there, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a rating and review to help other people find the show. And let's get into the exciting. Well, it wasn't very exciting for about a week trade period, and then it got very exciting for about 5 minutes last night, and then we get to dissect what it all means for SuperCoach in 2025. And I think this could be one of the more relevant trade periods that we've had for a while. Like, we like to talk about it each year, that a new club can create new opportunities, and usually there's one or two. Last year we had a guy called Brodie Grundy. I don't know if you remember him, Pat.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Who was an interesting case for us coming into the season at a new club. And then, James Jordan was a good example of someone who goes to a new team, gets a good role, some more opportunity, and was a handy sort of value pick for us at the start of the year. But I think there could be plenty more names this year that we might be looking at picking. So
spoilt for choice.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that when I was making some notes about this earlier is a lot of these could be potentially in the forward line, which I was very worried about at the end of this season, thinking, we didn't have a great list of players to choose from this year, and then we're going to lose a bunch with DPP changes. So that could be really handy if a few of these guys come in as forwards for us. But we'll go through some names. We've got them under different headings, and let's just go backwards and forwards and debate, because I think there'll be some contentious classifications. But we'll start, I think, with the guy that I saw the Phantom beat me to the punch by about 1 second on Twitter last night as soon as the deal went through to say...
Got to be first. You got to be quick.
That's right. Well, I was actually working and he wasn't, so I'll give him... he had an edge on me there. But Caleb Daniel now a Kangaroos player. Does that mean he's someone we want to pick in our SuperCoach teams? Because he was very cheap at the end of the season. And if he's cheap, and the thing that just made me want to go in and pick him straight away is Marty Pask, his manager, was on Trade Radio, and the quote from him was, "He'll play halfback. He wants to be free and happy."
Don't we all? Don't we all, Caleb? He's the first pick for mine. He's just like, it's a no-brainer.
100%. I guess it could be the 2025 version of Dane Zorko, the halfback in the forward line, with an even better price point as well. So I'm totally on board.
Yep.
Well, to me, he sounds like Jack Ziebel of about 3 years ago, who was a forward at the start of the year in SuperCoach, priced at like $250K, and then he went to halfback and averaged over 100. He averaged 49.9 this year, Daniel, in 15 games, but he was the sub in 8 of those. So his price is going to be way, way down. He finished the year priced at $252K. He was actually under $200K with a couple of rounds to go and just had a couple of good games to finish the year. But so that's just a bit of an indication. Doesn't mean that's exactly where we'll start next year, but he will be very, very cheap. So if he's
forward eligible.
Well, that's the thing. He was a mid forward this year, but he was he was the sub more than anything. So I'm not really sure where Champion Data will plonk him for next season. But he's going to be cheap wherever he is.
Yeah, I think would probably all start him regardless of even if he's mid-only. I think the value there is too good, and the DPP will come if he's playing off half-back, and if he's taking kick-ins at North, that's cash money.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned Zeba. We know what that role is at North. You know, with our good friend Zach Fisher this year, even managed to put up some good scores at different times of the year. But, obviously, your Sheasels, McKerches, Aaron Hall back in the day, we know what that can be like. Tick for Caleb Daniel. So we love him. But, I mean, the Bulldogs actually have generated plenty of good potential picks for us, guys getting out of the Bevo atmosphere.
Bevo salad.
Yes, exactly. And maybe, giving themselves a consistent role like we think Daniel will. And another one, Bailey Smith, probably the biggest name potentially that changed clubs. And he will be one of the most popular picks, I think, next year, just because after missing a year with a knee injury, he's going to come in at a massive discount. And you would think Chloe walks straight into the Geelong midfield.
Yeah, I definitely think he'll walk straight in there. And I guess for me, 4.48, it's one of those value sort of price tags. That's what he was priced at this year anyway. One of those value price tags that most of the time you're a bit 50-50 on, but I think with what we've seen him do, most people will be 100%. And plus the potential forward eligibility as well.
Oh, yeah. So he was mid-forward at the start of this year, and because he didn't play, we assume he'll be that again next year. So again, that's going to be a massive help to fill out our forward lines. And if he gets a 30% discount for not playing at all this year, that brings him under 400K probably. So, it's going to be very hard to pass up.
Yep, absolutely. Another guy in the forward line who gets a change of scenery, Shai Bolton. Your beloved Shai, premiership player at the Tigers, heads west for a bumper hand of draft picks. Didn't have a great year this year. Only averaged 77.2 from
Richmond
22
didn't
games.
go that well. You may have missed that.
No, can you fill me in? Can you give me just the blow-by-blow of the entire season from a Richmond perspective for us?
That's maybe a SuperCoach Plus special. We'll do that at some stage over the preseason.
Yeah, the 6-part of 1-hour episodes breaking down Richmond's season. But no, he's someone that can play football quite well and can score SuperCoach points quite well. Al, would you be interested in bringing him in?
I think it really does depend on what the forward line looks like next year for options, because we're obviously going to lose a few players like Zorko, you mentioned, Heaney, guys like that. Jai Caldwell won't be available as a forward next year. Flanders, I'm not really sure where he's going to be positioned, but
TPP.
So he could be one of the players we might consider, and he will be. I think he'll be unders for what he can do. So he'll be priced at his 77 average this year. He averaged 96.7 the year before. And he's sort of been more in the 80s kind of guy in the few years before that. So, I mean, where do you think he fits in at Freo? Because we know he can play that classic mid-forward role. And, kicking goals is probably where he gets a lot of his points from, but obviously getting some CBAs definitely helps. Is that? I sort of feel like I think he'll score higher than he did this year, but can he get back up to that 90, close to 100 when that Freo midfield's pretty hard to crack?
Yeah, well, Chloe and I were looking at the centre bounce attendances for Freo earlier, and it's not pretty if you're not one of Justin Longmuir's favourites. So, it was basically Sarong, Brayshaw, Young, Fife, and was it Johnson was the last one that was getting a few minutes
a couple,
as well?
Yeah.
Like 20% or something, well behind those other group.
Yeah, it's basically if he picks his 4, they're the 4 that'll rotate through with a ruck, and unless Shai can get into that, or unless they change the way they set that up.
Yeah, I might make a bold call and just say I'm not going to go there, I don't think.
Yeah, okay.
Which is
First
quite
bold
bold
call of season 2025, lock it in.
With
Chloe's
a couple more on the
call.
way.
There you go,
But
brand new
no,
segment.
I just don't think that he'll consistently hit that 100, just because I don't know if there will be that balance between goals and CBAs. I think it'll either be heavily reliant on goals, and how we all went with that Charlie Curnow towards the end of the year. It doesn't always work out the best, even if they are a great player. So
I think
no shade, but I don't
consistency you mentioned there is the thing. Like looking up his 2023 season when he did average nearly 97, he had 4 scores over 140 and 3 under 60. So, are you prepared to ride that
sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe not good.
Yeah. And the problem is he'll get cheap at some stage, and then he'll put out a couple of these massive scores, and that's when it'll be really tempting. But then you probably missed them. So,
yep.
I think if we can get forwards that will be definitely playing midfield minutes, I would rather put my eggs in that basket.
To briefly play devil's avocado, though, he might be under 350K, which if we don't have any other good primos, we might have a forward line of, Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel if he's forward eligible, Shai Bolton, A few other names we'll get to
Alex
briefly.
Neal-Bullen.
Yeah,
a little
course.
teaser there.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I think
I think he's on the watch list, but yeah, probably there's definitely a few question marks around there. But I think, just from a pure footy perspective, I think Freo have got a great player. Obviously, they paid a pretty heavy price for him, but they sort of think they're coming into the window, and he could.
I think he's very
help them
much
get
in
there.
that role as an X factor up forward, and some games he'll go 180, and some games he'll go 40, and that's just how it'll roll.
Yeah, that's what he's like. I mean, we before we get off the Bulldogs, Jack Macrae is another one that SuperCoach favourite, who again was a mid forward this year. Have to check on his numbers to see where he played again. Was used as the sub 4 times, so hard to know whether even if he gets forward eligibility next year, going into the St Kilda midfield. Is he back? I mean, he averaged 72, 73 this year. It was 99 last year, and then 120 for 10 years before that.
Yep.
But he is the wrong side of 30.
I think it's hard to tell personally, just because first of all, I'll just say thanks to Bevo for the price drop, bringing us into this year.
True.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to wonder, why was there that shift away from the midfield, and will he be able to replicate his previous form in that role? Obviously, we all question Bevo at times, but what was his reasoning really for taking Macrae out of that role?
Yeah.
Is there a secret there that
who can read Bevo's mind?
Yeah.
But if he wasn't, you've got your Bolton, Treloar, and Libba in there, and if Macrae sort of dropped out of the top 3 or 4, does he automatically become a gun mid again?
Well, I don't know. Does he get the chance to? Does he even get that role? They've got Jack Steele in there. They had a Crouch in there that's now no longer part of it. But their midfield has been criticised for being very one-paced for a few years now. They've spoken from a recruiting level about trying to bring pace in, and all the players they bring in are quick. Jack Macrae is not quick. As I say that as someone who is also not quick. Game, respect, game. But I don't know if he slides into the first rotation at every centre bounce. I don't know if he and Jack Steele split time, if Macrae plays forward, if he's on a wing, if he plays backup ruck. Who knows? I trust Ross almost as much as I trust Luke Beveridge, and that's not a lot.
Looking at Jack Macrae's CBA numbers, so in 2021 he had 77%, and that's when he was one of the top mids in the comp, and then they've gradually dropped over the last few years, 64%, 36%, and this year it was 12%. So you think he's going to improve on that?
I think that especially it kind of depends, because you've hit the nail on the head with the pace issue that they've got at the Saints, but then they did have Seb Ross playing that role, so it's whether they want to directly replace him or whether they are looking to change things up, which I think will probably be the decider in whether or not we see him at an optimal amount of centre bounces next year.
So yeah, pre-season watch, I guess, to try and gauge what they do there, because you think Philippou would be probably a starting CBA mid
You'd think
next
so.
year, and he's someone we will be looking at very closely.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm interested what Macrae does to the makeup of that side. But even then, they might value someone like a Hugo Garcia in that mid-forward role a bit more, because he's quicker, lays more tackles. Maybe it'll be interesting to see. I think you're right, Chloe. It'll be a pre-season watch.
And they've invested in him, so you think they've got something in mind. But now we've been sort of burying the lead here, because the most exciting name of the entire trade period, I don't know who to go to here first, because I know you're both absolutely massive fans.
It's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
James Peatling, now an Adelaide Crow, has shown some serious SuperCoach scoring potential in glimpses at the Giants. Again, someone who's plenty of times he's been used as the sub. Got a bit of a decent run in it towards the end of the year and put up some pretty good numbers. Again, question marks, where exactly does he go into the Crows lineup? But yes, there's a lot of people very, very keen on James Peatling.
Hi, I'm very keen. It's me. You spoke, after that run, he had 3 games in a row in the middle of the year where he's sub, and I've written down his scores since, post that game all the way to their semi-final elimination. He scored 93, 133, 93, 100, 40, 97, 99 and 66 in that last game, where I think he got, I don't want to say tagged, but got some attention after playing very well early, and then the Giants fell apart. But if he's forward eligible, nearly picked ahead of Daniel.
Well, here's another one, so he's mid-forward this year. So, and again, being the sub so many times, it's really hard to know. We'll have to wait and see whether he retains that. What if he's in the midfield? He'll be So he finished the year at, 410K, so it would be around that 400, 450K maybe.
That's a much harder sell
Yeah.
if he's in the midfield. Again, it'll be a pre-season watch, and again with the Saints, the Crows have just been so bad at having a one-paced midfield that's boring to watch, boring to pick apart from a Supercoach perspective. He offers something slightly different, but also I don't know if I trust Matthew Nicks to actually change it. So I don't know. What do you think, Chloe?
Well, it kind of comes down to, would you think that he would go above Saligo and Sam Berry, who made a late emergence in that midfield at the end of the year, and someone like a Rory Laird potentially as well, just to kind of take over that role. I did have the same scores noted down that you had in the game round 20 when he got 133, 20 CBAs. When he got 100 in round 22, 16 CBAs, and then when that 40 popped up in round 23, 5 CBAs. And then obviously there were times he was the sub as well, which I think led to such a volatile scoring and a potentially great price point. But most games where he played a full game, we saw great scoring potential, which is why I'm such a fan. And I do personally think that he will slot into that Adelaide midfield, and hopefully we'll be getting what we want. If he is just a mid option, I'm probably with you there, where it would take a little bit more convincing. But as a forward, 100%.
Yeah, it depends on rookies and structures and all that else, but from a mid perspective. But it comes down to as much watching Matthew Nicks as it does James Peatling in the pre-season. Because I trust Peatling, I don't trust Matthew Nicks.
There will be a lot of players as well, kind of around that 400 mark, it's seeming like, depending on how prices look. But
Even
I
at
think that
Adelaide,
you'll have to kind of...
Yeah.
it'll be a big decision which players to pick from that group, because some of them will obviously, as always, prove to be great value, and then others might not quite cut it. But I think definitely Peatling high on the watch list.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like if you take out all those sub games, he averaged 92.5. So
Yeah.
and then you're probably going to get him priced at 65, and you get 6 weeks of 90s scoring out of him, and then cash him in kind of thing.
God, I didn't realise that the 2025 podcast was R-rated. That's just, keep talking dirty to me.
Well, they were the five names that we really, really like. And then there's a few other, lots of others that we can talk about as possibilities. Dan Houston, one of the, I don't know if I really want to hear Dan Houston's name again for a while after
gosh.
how many twists and turns that took during the trade period, how many stories we published about Dan Houston when nothing was happening. But the trade thankfully did actually happen in the end.
If it hadn't happened, I would have gone to Alberton and burnt something, even if it was like a tree or a bush or just some grass. But the amount of times I had to find different photos of Dan Houston and try and be like, have we used this one in the last week? I don't know. We've used 12 this week. So anyway, he's moved. He's a pie. Good for him. Probably bad for Port Adelaide, but we're not. We don't care about actual football. We're all about the imaginary football. Chloe, are you picking him?
I think I will. Yeah, just because of that role at Collingwood. Obviously, he'll still slot straight in. We've seen what Nick Dacos has done from that halfback position, and it is Houston after all. So I think it'd be silly not to, personally.
Well, he's averaged 106 the last 2 years at Port, so he's in that top bracket of defenders. So he's not going to be cheap.
I could almost say he's like all-Australian.
Well, yeah.
Maybe once or maybe twice.
Possibly
maybe
twice.
I mean, does he get the kick-ins at the Pies? So there's no John Noble there anymore, I guess.
No, I mean... I feel like if you bring in a guy who is known for his kicking and can boot at 60 metres, you're not going to keep giving the ball to Darcy Moore at kickouts. No real knock on Darcy Moore. But, surely he takes kickouts. Surely he's the number one distributor out of the back line. Surely he maintains that average at the very worst.
Yeah, I would
at least
double
you
down
can
on
be,
that.
we can be... Speaking in October, we can be very confident about his role. Like some of these other guys, where does Peatling fit into the Crows team? Well, we know what Dan Houston
is
going to
not
do.
playing full forward for Collingwood next year.
He's not going to be the sub.
No.
They got him in for a reason, and I think that reason will produce plenty of SuperCoach points, as it has at Port.
Yep. So, you're probably paying for what you're going to get, but it's a pretty safe bet. And maybe there's a little bit extra he can put on top.
Yeah, I think picking him will come down to whether or not you want to go for value in the back line, or there's like a breakout candidate, or all the rookies are back there, or whatever it is. I feel like it's going to be a structural reason that you wouldn't pick him as opposed to a form reason.
Yep. He'll definitely be in that primo bracket too.
Yeah. Will he improve? Probably not, but you know what you're getting.
Yep. I suppose we should mention that he's suspended for round just the first
Oh,
game,
used
is
to,
it, next
yes.
year?
Yep. So you won't start him.
Unless
Unless
all that.
opening round is back and
Well, actually,
we
that's
have
a
to
good
deal
point.
with that
Yeah,
shenanigans.
the point's taken. Yeah, we don't know that yet. So, good, interesting. That's why you listen to these podcasts, for that kind of expert insight. Now, we talked about Adelaide. Another guy there that I actually am keeping quite a keen eye on is Isaac Cumming, who came in as a free agent from the Giants. Again, he's probably going to be really annoying price of like 400, 450 or something like that. But only played 6 games this year. I actually only played 4 home and away games, so we will get a bit of a discount. Hopefully from the Boffins who calculate the prices. So we'll see those in maybe early December usually. So we'll be all over those when they come out. But so, there'll definitely be some value there, I think, because he did have one breakout year in SuperCoach in 2022 when he averaged 95. And the key stat that year is that he took 129 kick-ins and was the number 1 man at GWS. This year he took 1 for the entire season.
It's not a lot.
So-
I'm not a numbers guy, but one is decidedly less than 129.
Exactly. So he can sort of play halfback, push up onto a wing maybe. So again, it'll be that Adelaide. What is the Adelaide best? Actually, I think we've got an idea, don't we? On
we
an
do
article
have a
on
story
predicting
coming.
best 23. So I might have to go and look at that after this and see where did we stick Peatling because, yes, him, but also
Peatling
Cumming.
and
Because I think if he's a kick-in guy, he's someone I will consider. This year, just the kick-ins at the Crows, they didn't really have a dominant kick-in player like a Luke Ryan or somebody. It was Mark Keane and Mitch Hinge sort of split them with a few other guys. So there's an opening there potentially.
Yeah, possibly. It depends on what role they've brought him in for and if he's a dashing halfback. If he's on a wing, I'm not interested. But
Yeah.
if he's behind the ball, then perhaps.
I wasn't
there's
too
scope.
keen until I just heard you mention Mitch Hinge because he was someone who I was kind of watching from afar at the end of last year. Never enough to bring him in, but I was just interested in his scoring capacity. And he did pretty well at the end of last year. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if Isaac Cumming was to assume that role, then I would be interested. I think it's just another one of those ones where it's a bit of a preseason watch just to see exactly where they'll put him. Hopefully they won't move him around, but, it's Nick, so
Yeah, we'll see.
The Hinge averaged 93.5 this year. So, so
nice.
I mean, I guess he's going to be there. But, the role, as we know, is good, just, pretty much at any team. So, he's on the watch list for me. Now, would you put these guys on the watch list? Our producers chucked him in here on the maybe pile, but I'm not so sure. I mean, Liam Baker to West Coast, as Richmond fans absolutely love Liam Baker, and I think West Coast fans will soon too. They're not huge fans of him right now by the sounds of it, but more to do with the list management strategy than anything Bakes has done. I think pretty hard to walk straight into that, I think, in your first day at the club. Luke Parker to North, definitely you would think opportunities, but probably not going to be super cheap. And the other one here, maybe Chloe, you could speak to, because I know he's one of your favourites. Talk about, I'm moaning about all my Richmond favourites leaving, but Matt Kennedy leaving Carlton, and he's gone to the Bulldogs, replacing Jack Macrae, maybe?
Yeah, it was a bit of a sad time yesterday. I actually threw my phone away for the last hour of the trade period, hoping that it wouldn't get done. But deep down, I knew that it would get done just because I knew that they'd get Jack Macrae to the Saints. So I checked, and it was about, I think it was like a minute past 7:30. I saw that it had come through. But
that's too late. They can
revoke
it.
But terrible for me as a Carlton supporter. I get what they're trying to do, but in terms of SuperCoach, I'm sniffing a bit of an opportunity. I'm not sure yet whether I'll go there. It depends how everything pans out with rookies. It's that awkward price point, potentially mid 400K, but there is that potential forward eligibility as well. I did have a couple of numbers in front of me too. So we've got, I don't know, I guess it does depend on his role as well, right? So at the end of last year, round 15, he got 116 with 27 CBAs. And round 19, 120 with 17 CBAs. I will note as well that round 15 game, 8 ruck contests. So.
Ooh, Luke Beveridge, just eyebrows shooting up at that.
And another consistent theme in these numbers was just a lot of score involvement. So it will be interesting to see how the Dogs plan to use him, whether they use him in a Macrae role, which would be a bit disappointing for him because that was kind of his role at Carlton.
Where he sort of got pushed out of the midfield,
Yeah, but I'm not quite sure what they're going to do, whether they're looking to maybe give him some more minutes instead of Libba in the middle, potentially. Or, Bont likes to spend a lot more time forward than someone like a Cripps would. So he might get his opportunity there. And I think if he does get the opportunity, I personally rate him quite high. I am a Khan supporter, but as sort of that clearance midfielder, I would back him in to be able to produce a pretty decent score. So especially at that price point as well, I would say it's worth a consideration, but,
He obviously has
biased.
the game that he can score. It's just, does he get the opportunity? Does he get the role? I mean, the big one for us, does he get forward eligibility? Because if he's,
that's the big
80K
one.
in the midfield, you wouldn't go there. But midfield, you could consider it. So he was the sub 4 times this year. 2022 was his sort of career best season, average 97. So, I mean, if you got that out of a forward for that sort of price.
Yeah, and again, we've been speaking about a lot of those weird like mid prices in the forward line. Can you pick 6 of them? Like we'll have to give on some of them, and Kennedy sounds like he's in that weird Bevo limbo, which might work against him. But I mean, if say someone goes down with a big injury, then he'd probably
that's right.
He'd
Libba,
probably be the next man
something.
up.
Yeah, exactly. That's
unless
good point.
adjacent to him, Riley Sanders will be one I'll be watching very closely in the trade period with those players moving out, with Macrae leaving, with Daniel leaving, with obviously Smith didn't play this year, but there's obviously certainly space for someone else to step up, and Sanders, if he keeps that forward eligibility, I don't know where he played in the VFL. I doubt it would be in the middle, but I doubt it would be forward. But
he was putting up some insane
yeah.
stats in the VFL, as was Macrae towards the end of the year.
So yeah, he'd be, you know, the next men up at the Dogs are the ones I'd be very interested in.
And I mean, the other thing we should know too is some of these guys like a Kennedy or, Cumming, if you can't quite get yourself to spend the money to take the risk in Classic, they're really guys you should be considering in draft.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you could get them as your sort of third forward or something.
Yep.
Third defender, you'd be in pretty good position.
Yeah, I think, Liam Baker, I think if he's, defence forward this year, if he keeps one of those, I'll have a look.
He's going to be mid-forward.
I'll certainly have a look at him depending on price, depending on role. If he spoke on SCNWA just after the trade that he wanted to play down back and that would be his preferred position.
Okay.
Obviously him and Minnie McWalter have a really good relationship, so I imagine there'd be some synergy there that he'd either be, down back and then maybe switching into the midfield, maybe like swapping with a Ruben Jinby or someone like that. So I think there's certainly scope for him to score reasonably well, but whether or not that, that level outperforms his price point.
I guess the one thing for him is he's never settled in one position because he's so good at plugging holes everywhere. But if he did actually just get, they decided, well, you're going to be our guy off half back and use him there, maybe.
I guess it's probably similar to Kennedy in that sense where, the last few years both of them have kind of been plugging holes. So if they can nail down a role, then they would definitely both be on the watch list and great draft shouts as well.
Yeah. Luke Parker, I think, is one to keep an eye on for if he gets forward eligibility. Which
I think he will.
Which even mid-season, if you, watch him for the first 6 rounds, he's playing off half forward, playing a link-up role. Maybe he's someone we look at when the DPPs kick in, or even if they kick in beforehand. I'm very intrigued there.
Unfortunately he's not going to be super cheap because he started this year fairly expensive.
Yes.
And then he was injured and, didn't play a lot.
Although 7 games, you get a discount for only playing 7 games. We'll find out when the bean counters release the number of beans each player is worth. Maybe he could be under 400,000 beans. That would be cheap.
Cool beans.
We'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. Now, the next category we've got is likely awkward price but could have potential. So,
which is this is peak draft.
That's right.
Swoop on these guys. But for Classic, I don't know. Daniel Rioli.
Well, we talk about draft. I think he's a great shout for draft. For those absolute top tier defenders he's gone, he's sort of definitely in that next little bracket underneath. I mean, he's averaged 90s, basically just low 90s the last 2 or 3 years. Can he get that up to around 3 figures? I actually, obviously, again, we talk about we're all biased and I'm a big Daniel Rioli fan as a Richmond supporter and, unhappy to see him leave. Obviously, we got something good for him, so that's great. But
2 good things for him.
Yeah, we did, I think I read somewhere about Gold Coast just giving away high draft picks.
Well, they're playing a different game, so
you get a car.
But obviously Dimmer's a big fan, and if he gets, I think he will be great for Gold Coast. So from their point of view, that's one other reason why maybe they were prepared to pay up. But obviously there's other factors that go into that as well. But in terms of where the club is at, and they obviously just getting picks and academy kids every year, but at some stage you and certainly I think where Hardwick is at, wants to put some performances on the field. And I think there's a role there clearly for him. And you think who played there this year? And it's the likes of Alex Sexton, who actually scored all right in SuperCoach in patches.
He was fine. I just think he's neat.
But if he can score, surely Dan Rioli is a big upgrade on Alex Sexton for Gold Coast sort of halfback freewheeling.
Understatement of the 2025 SuperCoach season. Dan Rioli is an upgrade on Alex Sexton. I mean, for a non-biased take, Chloe, are you interested?
I am interested, just because that role is so obviously there. I mean, it does depend on the price.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He's not going to be super cheap.
Yeah, but, he might be one of those players that I might not start, but I might be keeping an eye on before his first price rise to quickly pivot to if I get the chance. But
maybe he's like the Jordan Clark of this year or something. Like
exactly.
Sort of, started, it wasn't super cheap to start the year, but, the value became obvious as he...
We don't see him finishing as a top 3 defender, but maybe he's in that 6 to 8 range.
Yeah. He might finish as a top 3 defender.
Maybe. I certainly don't know.
I guess it does depend how he adapts to the role and the lifestyle change, pretty much everything. I'm sure he'll fit in pretty seamlessly, especially with Dimmer there. But, playing at people first more often when he's used to the G.
Yeah, I'd have to look up maybe what his scoring is like when he has gone up there. But another name in this little bracket that I actually am quite interested in, again, Chloe, we'll go to you as a Carlton expert. Where do you think Nick Haynes, I mean, is he even in the best 23? Because if he is, he's had one sort of primo SuperCoach season. That was back in 2020 when he averaged 98. He's been more around the 70s sort of since then. This year averaged 69 in 8 games and he was the sub in one of those. But in the VFL, he was putting up unbelievable numbers. Averaged 31 disposals, 9 intercepts and 130 SuperCoach points. So Carlton, obviously we're looking for some tall defenders. Does he play regularly and, can he be that sort of floating interceptor where we know he can actually score all right?
I think whether or not he plays regularly is a bit down to how Mitch McGovern's body holds up next year. I think that they'd probably pick Gov over him in the starting lineup, and then obviously Nick Newman also plays that sort of distributor role. It does depend what they want to do with their game plan as well, because towards the end of the year, everything was looking quite stagnant down the line. So maybe they've brought in Nick Haynes to shake that up a bit. And if that is the case, then they'll start him if they're looking for that change there. But personally, I would say, as it stands at the moment, I don't think he would be in the best 23. But
if that
happy to be proven wrong. And also, if the Brody Kemp trade had gone through, then you'd be starting Nick Haynes, right?
Yeah.
But I think they're pretty keen on continuing to develop Kemp as well. So I would say no for now, but it definitely is something that I'll be watching personally and for SuperCoach in the preseason. Yeah,
it's on the watch list, but again, probably sort of $350K type prices.
Yeah, that weird price is. If I'm going around that price, I might stump up a little bit more for Harry Perryman.
Me too.
Yeah, what do you think of Perryman? Because I must admit, I was pretty surprised when Giants got picked 16 for him, and Collingwood obviously was prepared to give him a lot of money.
900,000 beans a year. Man loves beans. I don't know. They've said they're going to play midfield, and if he's 400K and playing midfield at Collingwood, he can't be scoring terribly, even if he's kind of you don't bring someone in on that much money and then play them off half forward, switching into midfield, do you?
Zach Williams?
Yeah.
No, not for SuperCoach. I was just saying we're paying him $800,000 if he's playing in forward line.
Zach Williams also, if he leaves the forward 50, his hamstrings just erupt. Yeah. So I feel like that's the bigger factor.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm very keen on.
I'm very keen just because of that defensive eligibility. If you can get someone around for 400K and they're a defender and they're playing mid, that's SuperCoach gold. So I think I'm interested. I'll just make sure the role's there. But yeah,
certainly, watch and see. But I'm
Yeah,
very intrigued.
I must admit, I don't know heaps about Harry Perryman, but I will be.
I don't know if I'm a bar of soap. But
no, but I just saw defense 400K roll, and I thought, you know what, I'm considering that.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Well, the Collingwood midfield, there's opportunities there. You would think because you got Nick Dacos is probably a permanent midfielder now, but apart from him, they've got Pendles and Sidey and these sort of guys who are probably Tom Mitchell still.
Yeah, Mitchell, DeGoey.
He's on the list. DeGoey.
A lot of them are kind of asterisks at the moment, I would say, in terms of
Crisp
how their 2025 will look.
Yeah,
Crisp.
even a Finn Macrae is still hasn't stamped himself as a first choice there. They like Ed Allen, but surely he's not a starting mid unless he tears it up. Yeah,
I don't think they're paying Finn Macrae 900 beans is probably the issue.
Well, yeah, he's on 900 beans, which is why he's not quite there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in him, and I'm also I'm definitely from a draft perspective, but also maybe Alex Neal-Bullen. He was 8th overall.
I know that's the key stat for him, isn't it? That one caught me by surprise. 8th for total points in the forward line this year, and when you take out, we've already mentioned, Heaney and Flanders and all these guys, that bumps him up the list. Now we might get a few forwards coming in, which would be nice, but you probably have to consider him, especially in draft. Oh
yeah, absolutely in draft, and I think the fact that he doesn't miss many games, quite quiet, kind of unassuming. He might slide back a bit. Yeah, I mean, I think he's neat. I just think he's neat. Melbourne fans love him. He does a lot of the stuff that is unrewarded on a stat sheet and doesn't quite come up, isn't listed in the best, doesn't get Brownlow votes. But, just a very good player playing a very difficult role.
If you had to pick, though, would you pick Neal-Bullen or Peatling?
Oh, Peatling.
Yeah. I think Neal-Bullen, I do like him. As a player, but I think, maybe he'd be for draft, I think, for me, just because I think he'll have that same, we've talked about it a few times, but Adelaide will definitely be one of the teams to watch in the preseason, but I think he will slot in probably in that same role that he had at Melbourne, where he's mostly forward and, can go up the ground and give him that real sort of a bit of pace around that forward half, and then maybe he frees up a Rankin to go into the midfield more, that kind of thing. So again, that's sort of some of those flow-on effects that you were talking about. So, and I mean, Adelaide, Matthew Nicks, is going to be a lot of attention on what they do next year. So hopefully they help us out in SuperCoach.
Yep. Is Jack Graham best 23 at West Coast?
You think so? If they're paying him some beans, didn't they, to get him across?
Well, not a huge amount of beans, and he's also delisted free agent, wanted to go home. He's fine, but also they drastically need waffle help as well. So
I think that you got the Mini McQualter, the link there, probably sees what he did. Someone else, this isn't my original take, but made the good point that even though Jack Graham is, he's not a superstar by any stretch, and he hasn't won too many best and fairest, but every time he was available, he played for Richmond. Even when he was injured, he'd just come straight back into the team. I think the coaches obviously all saw something in him that maybe the rest of us don't. It's just, I think, that huge tank that he's got that he can just run all day and just sort of just give you that 100% effort, which McQualter must value, and I think he'll be all right at West Coast. Probably enjoy playing at Optus Stadium over there. Plenty
feels
of
like a cheat
room
code to
run
bring
around,
a tank with a swivel turret and those tread caterpillars onto the football field. But I don't know. There's no rules against that says a dog can't play football.
But I don't think he's a SuperCoach pick for us. So that just leaves, it still leaves plenty of other names because a lot happened in the end. Anyone else here that you like? The one that I must say I did actually look up his numbers was Harry Sharp. Just thought if he's sort of rookie price, and he's probably not going to be bargain rookie price, but he might be finished the year at 184k. So hopefully he might even be a little bit cheaper than that. It just obviously depends if he gets games for Melbourne. But if Melbourne have a role there for him, he played 6 games this year, 3 as the sub, so that obviously affected his average and his price and everything. Averaged 92 in the VFL. He's a wing flanker sort of type, so he's not going to put up massive numbers. But I thought, Caleb Windsor at the start of this year, I didn't pick him because he was 180k. I thought he's playing on the wing. You're not going to score many points. He averaged 64 over the first 9 rounds and made 170 grand. So could Harry do something like that?
Maybe, but also, we're looking at one of the best drafts in history. So, you stack him up next to Jagger Smith. Exactly. I'm picking Jagger Smith.
Well, and Melbourne has 2 top 10 picks, don't they?
Yeah. So
that's probably not.
And they have Caleb Windsor.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They've got Windsor and Langdon still there. So where does Sharp exactly fit in?
The last player they brought in for Brisbane, who we were, very sure was going to get game time, was Tom Fullerton. Who does he exist? I don't know. I think in the same vein, Jacob Constanti is obviously a watch from North.
I wasn't familiar with his existence until yesterday.
He's a forward, was a very late first round draft pick a few years ago. The fact that the Roos want him is maybe something.
Is it with Jade Rawlings? Is he their list guy? And he said at the end of the trade period that he'll be best 23. So
Yeah, okay. Well, he'll be rookie priced. So, if he's forward, then certainly one that I'll be watching.
What about Jake Stringer, Patch? One of your favourites?
What about Jake Stringer? I don't know who that is. Never heard of him.
I mean, he's not really a SuperCoach
not
player.
Not in Classic, not in Draft, not in like a Dynasty League where you've got 46 players on every list. I don't care. He'll be good from a football perspective, from a fantasy perspective. You know what you're going to get from Jake Stringer. He's going to be the same as it ever was, same as he ever was.
Not the new Jesse Hogan?
I doubt it. But
I hope not.
Look, I don't know, man. I just stopped spending mental energy on Jake Stringer.
Oh, let's talk about another big name, Chloe. Matt Owies.
It's painful. I'm not going to lie, it's painful. But I would not say he has any SuperCoach relevance, unfortunately, although I do wish him the best. Over in the West?
I mean, yeah, some of these other names. Jack Darling, just no in any universe.
No, yeah.
I mean, he's put down Tom Campbell here now, surely. I suppose if
Max Gorn goes
to be
down,
fair, he's put down
yeah.
Tom Campbell under irrelevant.
Yeah, he did, that's true.
Yeah.
And Elliot Himmelberg, which I forgot happened. But you mentioned, Tom Campbell's really, I mean, obviously he would be aware of the fact, no slide on Tom, that he's behind Max Gorn in the queue at Melbourne. But Max is getting on a little bit, and the long season does tend to wear on him a bit. So maybe if something happened and he got his chance, I mean, he scores well in the VFL.
Yeah, I don't mind it as a list option for Melbourne. I think that especially after what happened this year, he could definitely come in and play a role when necessary. So I guess it's all hypothetical. But if he was to play a role for a longer period of time, then maybe you could bring him in for a bit of a cash grab.
Yep.
But apart from that, I probably wouldn't consider.
Yep. Any interest in Joe Richards?
No.
Really.
Missed him this year, so I'm not going to go back next year.
John Noble?
No.
Rory Atkins.
Actually, I picked Rory
I don't know how
last year, I think.
41 minutes and 40 seconds without talking about Rory Atkins.
I think I had him for about 6 weeks or something in the middle of the year last year, and
they were the worst 6 weeks of your life.
I mean, I just think Rory Atkins has done an amazing job to make a career as an AFL footballer. Now to get another year, I think he's on 400,000 or something.
With like the handicap of not being 2 meters tall. Like if, Tom Campbell has had a 10-year career, played 40 games. Rory Atkins has done the same thing, but he's not very tall and large. Like incredible. Hats off to you, sir. But I think it really said it all when Port Adelaide's head of football was like, we brought in two people that, 2 players we think can really make an impact in our best 22. And he was not. Rory Atkins was not one of those 2. He said, we need more Sandful depth and we need more for,
wow.
He's a great character. And I'm like, let's just cross him off.
Yeah,
my
I don't
list
think
of,
so.
Yeah.
I mean, the other ones that we haven't mentioned, which I don't think you would consider either of them in SuperCoach, is Josh Battle and Tom Barrass. But we did talk earlier a little bit about the opportunities that trades can create for other players. Does that make James Sicily suddenly very relevant if you've got 2 pretty good key stoppers down back coming in who can take that fullback, binding role, and Sicily can just float around doing his intercepting thing?
I'm not sure. It's part of me, I could be way off here. I feel like they might play him forward because they'll have Sam Frost back there.
I was about to say the same thing.
They've got too many defenders.
That makes me more scared to pick Sicily than I was this year, even knowing that he would be key back and then they'd swing him forward to try and win a game. Like, I don't want to bar of him because he might.
I think it's just a bit too uncertain for me.
Yeah. Even if, they've got Hardwick who can play forward and back, it might be a matchup thing where, like, they're coming up against the Bulldogs, so Sicily plays back, Hardwick plays forward, and then the next week they're coming up against, a smaller forward line, and then they just switch the roles around. Like, I'd need to see it.
They've got plenty of options, which is great for them, but not great for SuperCoach. No. You don't really want to pick someone who is a part of a team that has options and moving parts. Yeah. It was a bit Bulldogs-like.
I want certainty in my SuperCoach players, and that's not what we're going to get from Sicily.
I mean, Sicily was actually, surprisingly good at that role when it was used a few times this year to go forward and win a game virtually. He did it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, he's a good footballer.
But that's probably not good for us, though, because then once you start thinking of doing that on a more long-term sort of basis, playing him there for a whole game or half a game, that's when it.
I think
good for a bit of a score spike with a goal, but not for a long-term period. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly think the role he had this year was very good in that he knew he was down back and then might go forward and get that massive spike. But no, I'm not interested.
I did just have a thought while we're talking about I have here help or hinder down here. While we're talking about that, I thought of it while we were talking about Rory Atkins, and then there's obviously the exit of Houston. I mean, now we're kind of bringing up irrelevant names, but what do you think of Jace Burgoyne in that role for Port next year? I
quite like Jace Burgoyne. I nearly bought him in the season just gone at that point where he just was about to pop, and I'm like, I'll bring in Matt Rowell instead. And I reckon Burgoyne outscored Rowell on the run home.
Because they've got Burgoyne, they've got Logan Evans.
Your favourite. Kane Farrell.
Yeah, Kane Farrell's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Kane Farrell will now have a monopoly on kickouts, which really interests me, especially from a draft perspective. I'd need to see it, but it's certainly there's a void of significance back there that I think is certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, 100%. Are there any other teams that we should be thinking about that kind of thing?
Intrigued by North Melbourne, how they'll structure up with some new players in, with some young talent that are all jostling for midfield time. Sheasel's obviously in there. Where does McKercher play? They've traditionally always played two half-backs. You suspect Fisher is not going to be one of them if they have literally any other options. But they've got like Josh Goder as well, who's highly touted, did his Achilles last year. He's someone I'd be keen to look at if Braden George gets a run at it as a forward. He'd be rookie priced. I'd be really intrigued by that. Tristan Cherry as well, someone we'd be considering in the ruck. I think North Melbourne will be very interesting from a Supercoach perspective.
Jack Darling, obviously.
It goes without saying. I didn't need to bring him up. I'm intrigued by how they set up, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. And
the other one obviously is talk about a void of significance. Richmond. The
whole
road is basically a void at the moment. So somebody's going to play.
The void.
And we'll find out maybe in around draft night who will actually be playing for Richmond next year. So there'll be plenty of names there that you would think will come in cheap and will get opportunities. We're talking about, Richmond has the best hands at the draft since, expansion clubs. And remember those days when we picked all those Gold Coast kids and all those Giants kids. One thing to bear in mind is that they lost a lot of games by a lot of points and often didn't score that well.
Yes. If they draft defenders, then jump on. If they draft a forward, don't know him, never heard of him.
But that'll be an interesting question whether you pay up for some of these really high draft picks when they're going to be playing at what we think will be a pretty bad team. Yep. But they're going to get games, I think it's fair to say.
I have a question for you, Al. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on Tom Lynch? Whether it be for draft or classic?
He'll be cheap. Again, we talk about forwards. He'll be very cheap. He could be like $200,000. So it's going to be hard.
$200,000 last year.
This time last year I said, Nat Fife, you wouldn't go there in a million years. And then, of course, I picked him and it blew up in my face again. So I should learn from that. So, probably not. Key forwards who are always injured are probably not a great recipe for Supercoach success. But, he has put up some massive scores in the past, but that was a few years ago now. And, just so injury prone. If you can actually string some games together, I'd just be really happy for a Richmond fan's point of view. So I think I'll put a line through him. But, as you say never. If he just had a red-hot pre-season and stormed into round zero.
You said never all of last pre-season and then had him right up until he did the injury. So I do not believe you at all.
Well, as I said, someone has to play for Richmond, so they might have to wheel him out.
Yep. Just bring him out with some crutches and, still might be something. Might be worth it.
Another person who I have down here who could be impacted by the arrival of a new player, by the arrival of Bailey Smith to Geelong more specifically, Jack Bowes. So he finished the year with 77, 105, 130 in Supercoach, currently priced at around 420. I was considering him as a bit of a value option, but how do you think that affects him?
I think he's sort of draft only. What about Max Holmes, who finished the year? He was really a primo and became probably their best mid.
One of the better value picks of last year.
Yeah, but he won't be as much value next year.
If he's defensive, then I'll have a look. Yeah. But I think if he's mid only, I'd be pretty hard pressed to. I think it'll be very much a guns and rookies set up in the middle next year. possibly with heavy emphasis on rookies.
I should probably learn from that. I went a bit too heavy on value last year and it didn't work out. So.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to know. We haven't seen the prices yet. They will start filtering through from the bean counters hopefully shortly, hopefully just after the draft, and we'll have some fun news around positions and prices then, hopefully. So keep an eye on Code Sports.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And all of that. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to really look at it too closely. As I mentioned before, Bulldogs is someone I'm interested in. If Matt Kennedy starts playing in the ruck, then sign me up.
Hit out smash.
Ruck
exactly.
smash.
Ruck smash.
Bring back the ruck smash.
That's good, Shad. So yeah, as you said, we'll be all over the draft where we get together for another one of these in a few weeks' time and talk about some of those kids. And obviously rookies are so important in SuperCoach, and then we will have the prices and the positions when they first come out. These you'll hear them first on the podcast. So we'll be planning a lot more of these over the preseason, and then once we get into actual 2025, we'll be rolling them out pretty consistently. So, Patch, I've appreciated your time after such a hectic 10 days. I think we can just have a little lie down.
A little lie down for all of a few weeks, and then the draft happens and kicks into gear. No, thank you, Al. It's been a pleasure.
And Chloe, been great having you on board. Excellent first up performance.
Happy to be here. I'm excited to jump on a few more pods in the foreseeable future.
Dean Polo-esque debut from you.
I think a lot more promise for the career going forward, hopefully.
Hope so.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave a rating and review, and we'll have plenty more coming up over the off-season.